Hi, everybody. Mark Pescatore from Systems Contractor News. Happy AI Appreciation Day. I'll be honest with you, I had no idea this actually was a thing, but July 16th has been celebrated as AI Appreciation Day since 2021. So I figured, what better way to celebrate than to bring on the author of this book, LevAIthan, Julian Phillips. Now, he's not just an author. His day job, he's the Senior Vice President and Managing Director of XTG, a division of AVI-SPL that's focused on experience technology solutions. Julian, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Mark. It's always a pleasure.
Now, I've not finished the book. It's over 400 pages, but I'm getting into it, and you cover a lot of different things. There's some history in there. There's some philosophy in there. There's ethics in there. And something else that's in there is a co-author who's not human. So tell me, what prompted you to write this book and enlist AI to be your co-author?
When you get a little bit further into the book, Mark, you'll see there's a bit when I write about the relationship between AI and human beings. And I talk about the fact that in my life, I have started 4 books and never finished a single one. And it's indicated that ideas, I have a plenty, discipline, not so much. And so I had this idea about writing about AI, not just about AI, but writing about its relationship with us as human beings, putting an historical context in, as you say, but also trying to look at where we are and where we might be headed. So the book really, yes, it's about AI, but it's more about human beings. And that was really what I wanted to point out in there. So my relationship with Athena enabled me to get structure into the book. It enabled me to do a huge amount of research that I probably wouldn't have been able to have done on my own, and actually helped with the actual writing process as well, because Athena's been trained on my writing style. Every article I've written ever is trained with Athena. So she pretty much writes in my style, and it's been quite a remarkable process.
That's very cool. And yes, I have about 10 books myself. And boy, when they're done, you're going to love them. So I understand why you would want to use AI as an assistant, because it's really hard to get to those final pages, isn't
it? It is. And, in all honesty, I probably spent more time editing than I did in writing. And I think the editing process is really interesting, because it doesn't matter what creativity you got to one particular point. When you start editing, you become much more harsh on yourself than you are through the creative process. So, but it was a fascinating process for sure. And I think I'm reading a lot on social media, especially on LinkedIn at the moment, where it's clear that AI is helping with the creative process. And I think in most cases, it's a good thing, because if you compare that to how people wrote before, I prefer the latter version.
Well, fair enough. Not all of us use AI, though.
That's true.
Some of us still like it the old-fashioned way.
Not a seasoned journalist like you, Mark.
Well, let's talk about AI as it relates to Pro AV. And as we commemorate AI Appreciation Day, what kind of positive impacts have you already seen on Pro AV with AI?
Yeah, I'm going to talk about that. But before I do, I'm just going to take you back to the AVIT summit that I spoke at over a year ago.
Yep.
And I talked about the fact that we're not just looking at a new wave of technology with AI. What we're looking at is a new era for humanity. And I likened it to the age of steam, the age of electricity, and now the AI era. And I think it's really important we understand that before we then try and figure out what does this mean for AV, of which there are many opportunities, I believe. And what I mean by a new era, if you look at a lot of the technologies that we've used, including a lot of the very advanced technologies we've used in AV to help productivity, improve meetings, improve a whole range of things, although they've been groundbreaking and they've evolved rapidly, the fundamental structure of how we work and the processes we go through hasn't fundamentally changed for over 100 years. And I think that's just about to change. And I think this is why we're in a new era. And we followed pretty much a linear process in the way we do things that even goes back all the way to Henry Ford and the assembly line in Michigan. And I think what AI is doing is it's creating an opportunity to change everything. And the reason why I wrote so broadly in the book, not just about work, but about health, about education, about transport, justice, even love in the book, is that AI is going to change not only the relationship between human beings and machines, which it will, but also how we as human beings interact with each other. Now, to answer your question, what about AV? Well, I think we need to reflect on the fact that we have built an industry, hundreds of billions of dollar industry in helping people tell their story. That's what we do. We're storytellers. We build the infrastructure, we provide the support, the services, and the technology that enables people to share their story, to collaborate, and to be able to get stuff done, whether that be in a traditional work environment, in education, in entertainment, in hospitality. We are storytellers. And I think what AI does is it gives us the most incredible, powerful tools that enable us to tell stories in ways that we never previously thought possible. And I highlight 3 isms in the book. There's datagentism, which is a portmanteau between data and agent, and we could talk about the role of AI agents in the way that does that. In other words, a total reimagination in the way that we look at data and how we visualize and interact with data, which quite frankly, in the traditional AV context, has been pretty much the same for a long period. It's 2-dimensional, it's old static data that we present in a PowerPoint presentation on a back wall somewhere. And I think we have amazing opportunities now to reimagine how we interact with data and get powerful insights that drive positive action. The second is hyper-personalism, this amazing ability to personalize everything. And I think everyone's getting excited about Google's VO3 platform at the moment with these very funny videos that are now appearing online. But think about the potential of what that means. Think about the fact that in a day, we could actually produce high quality impact videos that are actually personalized to a particular company, to a particular brand, to something without the overhead of all of the production costs and all the rest of it. I actually think that's going to drive AV adoption, not suppress it. And so I think that's an amazing thing. And the final thing is ultrasensism. And that is the fact that people do not make decisions based on just sight and sound alone. They do it on how they feel. They do it on what they smell and the environment in which they're in. And I use the example of the Sphere in Las Vegas and also the Arte Museum, which we did actually. And the fact that we trying to grab people's attention right now is really difficult with all the swipe lefts and everything that's going on with social media. And people do have short attention spans. So if we really want to have impact on the way that people are making decisions and taking positive action, we've got to engage all the senses. And this is what we do in the AV industry. So if you take those 3 isms and then you apply that to the market that we have right now, I think it creates a multiple 4, 5x growth potential for the AV industry over anything we've known before. So that's why it's relevant, and that's why I'm excited about it.
And I got to tell you, going back to your book for just a moment, I find it very important that you bring up history a lot in the book. The book has a lot of history in it because AI didn't come out of a bubble. It doesn't live in a bubble, doesn't exist in a bubble, and it wasn't created in a bubble. And I think having perspective is so important to understanding exactly what AI can do.
Yeah, I'm not saying that younger generations don't know history, but what I have found is that we can recall a lot of facts and bits of information from historical events, but trying to put that into context and to be able to use critical thinking to actually say, okay, if this is what happened in the way that various things happened 40, 50 years ago, what are the patterns of things that we're seeing again, and how can we actually learn from that might help us into the future? And so I was very deliberate that if this is a new era, we need to understand the eras that have gone before and what informed the decisions that we made then, and how do we actually build and develop economies and education and healthcare and all these things out of that. And hopefully, when we get to the chapter on ethics, which is right towards the end, it's really important, I believe, if we're talking about AI appreciation, I believe that AI has the potential to unlock human potential in ways that we never imagined. I believe it can actually help to reduce the inequity between those that have and those that don't. I believe we can actually help the world to develop often through disadvantages in the past, to encourage small business, to encourage agricultural growth, to sort a whole lot of things out. However, and there is a however to this, if we're not thinking ethically about the use of AI, if we're not thinking about how do we remove bias and how do we stop people who have vested interests controlling AI, then we could find the converse might be true, and that it actually creates greater inequity and closes the system down. Because this thing is so powerful that in the wrong hands, used badly, it could, change everything, and not necessarily for the better. So my hope is, and why I wrote the book partly as a provocation, is so that everybody would actually use this as an opportunity to actually understand that this is happening, and it's happening now. Opting out is not an option. Therefore, you have to learn, you have to engage, you have to try and figure it out. But AI will affect everything that you do as a human being moving forward, and especially for those with children. They will grow up in this new era, and with that becomes our responsibility to ensure that they're equipped for what is coming next.
And you touched on something. I wanted to bring up one more question for you, and you touched on it a little bit. I don't think we found AI's killer app for Pro AV yet, but I might be able to make the argument that the real-time translations. I mean, companies like AI Media, Enco, Tightrope, 3Play, they're all coming through these. It helps with accessibility, which I think is pretty important. And so I think that, as far as killer apps go, I think that's impressive. But where do you see AI making significant contributions to Pro AV in the future? Is there a killer app?
If I work on the basis that AI changes everything, then I think what we have to expect is it's going to change everything. And so I'm not necessarily sure there is one particular killer app, because I could point at ways that AI is going to, especially for those in the integration business in particular, we're not the most efficient business. We have a lot of dysfunction in the way we do things, built on this very linear model. I think if you're looking at killer apps, I would actually streamlining our supply chain, improving the way that our processes, taking out waste, and a whole range of other things could be the killer app for most integrators, quite frankly. And it certainly would help transform profitability and sustainability for the business moving forward. I think as far as customer-facing apps are concerned, I think anything that helps human beings connect and communicate more simply, more easily, to understand each other, to your point, the transcription thing, helping people where English isn't their first language, who are part of global teams, who are sort of nodding in meetings, believing that they're understanding each other, but they might not be. I think anything that can remove those barriers is a good thing. I think we have to accept, I talk about neurodiversity, and I reference Kay Sargent in her work in the book as well. Anything that helps people who think differently to be able to engage and collaborate is a good thing. And there's a reason why this is. In the chapter on education, I talk about Sir Ken Robinson and his TED talk about how his argument was that in the education system that we've had, we educate creativity out of children, but inherently children are infinitely creative. And yet we've conditioned people not to be divergent in their thought, to basically follow the rules, and this is the correct answer, and don't question it because you'll get a 0 as opposed to being an A+ student. But if you think about the process of divergent thinking, it is about thinking outside of the box and thinking differently and challenging the very question you've been asked. And I think the ability to deliver to people that accommodates that kind of divergent thinking, whether people have a condition or not, doesn't really matter. It's just the way that we process and the way that we think. Not everybody thinks the same. Not everyone communicates and collaborates the same. And so I think to that end, that could well be one of the killer apps for sure, about how we enable people to communicate more simply, understand each other, and make better decisions faster than we would otherwise do. Because one thing is for certain in this AI era, things are moving so fast. We no longer have the luxury for long-term projects where we can predict what the outcome is going to be, because everything is changing. Therefore, we need to communicate quicker. We need to get better decisions. We need to have more insights into real-time data. And guess what? The AV industry is perfectly poised to help our customers with that.
Excellent. Julian, thank you very much for taking the time with us. The name of the book, LevAIthan, by Julian Phillips and Athena, available now At
On
Amazon.
Amazon, on Amazon.com. Just search for Julian Phillips Athena and you'll find it right there.
Excellent. Thanks again, Julian. We really appreciate the time.
Cheers, Mark. See you
Thanks.
again.